8,000 men stand outside the walls of Astapor in perfect silence. No shuffling, no coughing, no fear, just spears, spiked bronze caps, and eyes that have already made peace with death. These are the Unsullied, soldiers trained and drugged to ignore pain, who once stopped an entire Dothraki horde at a city gate. And I get it. As a piece of dark fantasy design, it's magnificent. So ask one small, stupid question. When one of them dies, who replaces him? Because that answer turns the most disciplined army in the world into the most expensive countdown in the world. Today we're going to feed them, march them, and shoot arrows at them. And then they meet the one opponent nobody writes songs about, a supply ledger with a 10-year lead time. Now, I don't want to make the lazy version of this argument. The lazy version says, eunuch slaves can't fight, and history laughs at that. Slave soldiers are real. The Janissaries terrorized Europe for centuries. The Mamluks beat the Mongols, the actual Mongols. And discipline is not a fantasy cheat code. It is the single biggest force multiplier in pre-modern warfare. Drilled, boring, obedient infantry beats brave screaming mobs almost every time. Ask the Romans. So no, the Unsullied would not fail because of what the masters took from them. The soldiers are fine. It's the factory that kills them. Let's look at that factory, using canon numbers. Every Unsullied is cut at 5 years old. He then trains for roughly a decade before he earns the spiked cap. And the good masters of Astapor brag about the failure rate. Depending on which slaver you ask, 2 boys die in training for every one who graduates. So run it backwards. Daenerys buys 8,000 finished Unsullied at a 1 in 3 survival rate. Producing them meant pushing roughly 24,000 5-year-olds into the machine. 16,000 of them die before the product ships. That's a rough model. Astapor does not publish annual reports, but the shape of it holds, and that shape is not an army. That is a decade-long assembly line where the raw material is kindergarteners. Hold on to that image, because the assembly line, the pipeline, is the real villain of this video. Not the Dothraki, not Westeros, the pipeline. And the pipeline explains the price tag too. Fully trained Unsullied cost fortunes. Cities buy them by the dozen, not by the thousand. Daenerys only affords 8,000 because she pays with a dragon and then commits history's most flammable chargeback. Cannon is quietly admitting something there. No honest buyer can afford this army at scale, remember that. And if watching accountants ruin fantasy armies brings you joy, subscribe. The button costs 0 children and takes 10 years less than a spearman. Anyway, Test 1. Food. An army on campaign burns around 3,000 calories per man per day. And let's be generous, these men run lean. 8,000 Unsullied means 24 million calories a day, which is about 40,000 Big Macs, delivered daily by ox cart. In grain, that's roughly 12 tons a day, over 4,000 tons a year. Someone has to manage all of that. Grey Worm, commander of the Unsullied, breaker of chains, senior director of grain procurement. Now, 12 tons a day is survivable for a normal army, because normal armies have cavalry. Riders screen the column, scout the roads, and strip the countryside like locusts with a salary. The Unsullied have none. They are pure heavy infantry, walking 15 miles a day, chained to a wagon train they cannot protect at range. Every mile from a friendly port makes them slower and hungrier. Oh, and the arithmetic runs in the other direction too. 8,000 men produce roughly 4 tons of human waste every single day. Dig the latrines in the wrong spot, the water goes bad, and everyone downwind has a historically accurate bad time. Courage is free, calories are not. But hunger is not what kills this army first. Hold that thought. Test 2. Arrows. The Unsullied carry a spear, a shield, and a short sword, and that is the entire product line. No archers, no cavalry, no engineers, just the phalanx. And a pure spear wall has one famous customer review, written in blood at Carrhae. Roughly 40,000 Roman heavy infantry, the best in the world, meet 10,000 Parthian horse archers. The Romans form their shield wall, textbook perfect. The Parthians ride in circles and shoot them for hours, like a rotisserie with extra steps. 20,000 Romans die, 20,000 more are captured. The horse archers barely break a sweat. Now swap Romans for Unsullied and Parthians for any steppe army, and tell me what changes. And you don't even need elite horse archers. At Carrhae, English peasants with longbows shred the armored nobility of France from a polite distance. Any army with bows, mud, and a hill can bleed a spear wall for free. The analogy is not perfect, but the lesson is simple. Disciplined infantry still hates being shot by people who refuse to stand still. Perfect discipline solves exactly one problem: a frontal charge. Against an enemy who refuses to charge, the Unsullied are a very patient target. A spear wall is a solution. It is not a strategy. But hold up, you're probably typing, they held Qohor against the Dothraki. They did. And the 3,000 of Qohor is my favorite piece of evidence, for my side. The story goes, 3,000 Unsullied face a Khalasar, tens of thousands strong, stand through 18 charges, and win. Glorious. Also absolutely goddamn ruinous, because by the end, maybe 600 are still standing. That is an 80% casualty rate in their greatest victory. Their proudest legend is the pipeline's worst nightmare. 2,400 dead. Unsullied means over 7,000 boys fed back into the machine. Remember the math, and a full decade passes before a single replacement walks out the door. Qohor doesn't prove the Unsullied can win a battle. It proves they can afford about one. Test 3. The bodies themselves. This is where the no-pain reputation stops being cool and starts reading like a coroner's note. Castration before puberty would likely reduce muscle development, bone density, and long-term physical resilience. The historical castrati grew tall but fragile, and they only had to survive opera. That does not make the Unsullied useless. It makes the maintenance bill uglier, and the bill is bronze, full kit, 15 miles a day. Then Astapor doses him daily with the wine of courage, so he learns to ignore the damage. Sounds terrifying, except pain is not weakness. Pain is data. Pain tells a soldier his foot has gone bad, his ankle is cracked, and he needs a healer today. An army that cannot feel infection does not march through it. It marinates in it, and in pre-modern warfare, disease already kills somewhere between 2 and 6 soldiers for every one who falls in battle. Astapor took the one alarm system evolution installs for free and switched it off, on purpose, forever. Why? Because Astapor, that's why. Which brings us to test 4, the one I promised you, attrition. Here is the boring, brutal difference between a real army and the Unsullied. In 216 BC, Hannibal annihilates Rome at Cannae. Somewhere between 50 and 70,000 Romans die in one afternoon, the worst day Rome ever has. And within a year, Rome fields new legions. They enroll teenagers, they enroll debtors, they famously enroll slaves, and they drill them into soldiers in months. That is what a replacement pipeline looks like. Wide intake, fast training, adult recruits. Even history's real slave armies understood this. The Ottomans take boys in their teens, train them in a few years, and keep the intake wide. Astapor looks at the same problem and chooses the version with triple the lead time and a 2/3 mortality rate. Bold business model. Now run the Unsullied through a much smaller disaster than Cannae. Lose 2,000 men, a bad day, not even a catastrophe. The replacement order reads, 6,000 5-year-olds, 10 years, 4,000 dead in production. There is no surge capacity. There is no emergency draft. The masters do not offer a warranty, and no god in Essos answers requisition prayers. Every Unsullied who dies is gone the way a cathedral is gone. You can buy an army, you cannot buy time, and the books quietly confirm all of it. Watch Marine, the Unsullied conquer the city, then start dying. Not in battle, but in alleys. The sons of the Harpy knife them in 2s and 3s. At night, where a phalanx cannot form. The most disciplined soldiers alive are helpless against an enemy that refuses to line up, and every loss is permanent. Worse, occupation duty is the one job their training actively sabotages. These men are drilled from age 5 to obey, hold formation, and wait for orders. Policing a hostile city needs initiative, informants, and improvisation. 3 things Astapor beat out of them on purpose. So Daenerys ends up assigning guards to guard her guards. Meanwhile, back in Astapor, King Cleon the Butcher tries to rebuild the brand. He grabs highborn boys, cuts them, hands them spears, and declares them new Unsullied. They shatter almost instantly, because you cannot speedrun a 10-year child factory, however enthusiastic you're butchering. The setting keeps writing my thesis for me. What is cut may never be refunded. Now, at this point, someone is already typing, the Spartans were real and their brutal training worked. Yes, thank you. Sparta is not the counter-argument. Sparta is the case study. Full Spartiates could only be born, never recruited, and their numbers bled down for centuries. The Greeks even had a word for it, oliganthropia, man shortage. By 371 BC, maybe 1,000 and change full citizens remain. Then Leuctra happens. Roughly 400 die in one afternoon, and Sparta, the Sparta, is finished as a great power forever. One bad Tuesday. The real-world Unsullied already existed, and they went extinct exactly on schedule. The objection is the evidence. So, the verdict, in tears, because a flat yes or no would be lazy. As a city garrison, a palace guard, a slave control force standing on flat paving stones near a granary? Excellent, possibly the best in their world. In one pitched battle on chosen ground against an enemy polite enough to charge head-on? Terrifying. Ask the 600 of Qohor, but in a real war, campaigns, seasons, disease, arrows, attrition, year after grinding year? No. And that's before anyone marches them into a Westerosi winter with no body fat, hormone-starved circulation, and a uniform that is mostly confidence. The cold does not negotiate with discipline, yet notice they never actually break. They don't have to. The Unsullied simply run out, one irreplaceable funeral at a time, while every enemy keeps making new soldiers the old-fashioned way. An army you cannot replace is not an army. It is an heirloom, and nobody wins a war swinging the family china. Thanks for auditing a fantasy superpower with me. If you want the next legendary army fed, itemized, and gently dismantled in a ledger, tell me who's next in the comments. And if you stayed this long, you've earned one final terrible number. It's about the dogs. Canon says every recruit is handed a puppy on the day he is cut. He raises it for a year. Then he is ordered to strangle it. Obedience test, courtesy of Astapor. Now apply the pipeline math one last time. 24,000 boys in the machine means Astapor is sourcing, feeding, and scheduling thousands of doomed puppies as military infrastructure. Somewhere in that city, a man's entire job is puppy procurement, and he has quotas. So why does Astapor collapse the moment Daenerys leaves? The poets say freedom. The accountants say, have you seen what this city spends on dogs?